And I now give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Once again, I have to start my statement with an expression of regret regarding the virtual format of today's meeting. Our work in front of computer screens looks very odd in the eyes of the international community, given the sustainable positive trend in the COVID situation in New York. Nothing is preventing members of the Security Council from returning to their usual meetings in the Security Council chamber, whilst respecting all social distancing requirements. We would urge our Security Council colleagues to recall that the Security Council should act as an example and set the tone for efforts to protect international peace and security, and not hide in a virtual format. We would urge very strongly the Chinese presidency to take the initiative and to get the Council back to its usual working methods. Mr. President, we are grateful to the Special Envoy of the Secretary General Martin Griffiths and the Under Secretary General Mark Lowcock for their comprehensive overviews of the situation in Yemen. We are carefully following the difficult military and political crisis in the Yemen Republic that has unfortunately been going on for some 6 years now. We are particularly worried by the situation in the Marib Governorate. Of serious concern are the ongoing attacks on civilian facilities, inter alia on Saudi Arabia. We strongly urge all parties to the conflict to strictly comply with the provisions of international humanitarian law and swiftly and fully refrain from hostilities. Hostilities destroy non-military infrastructure and cause civilian victims. We also call for diplomatic and political ways to be found to settle the conflict. In this context, we have welcomed the recent proposals by the Saudi Arabian leadership for a peaceful resolution to the crisis, and we've urged the warring parties to study them in depth. We have always advocated for a swift end to the country's protracted armed conflict and for ensuring lasting stability and national reconciliation in Yemen. We are still convinced that achieving a comprehensive long-term settlement of the Yemen conflict is only possible by appropriately taking into account all the interests of all the political forces in the country. It would be easier to achieve that aim if the sea, air and land blockades of different areas were lifted, and also if other essential steps were taken to improve the critical socio and economic and humanitarian situations in Yemen. We intend to continue to support the relevant UN efforts and the unstinting work of Special Envoy Martin Griffiths. We're also actively encouraging President Hadi and the leadership of the Ansar Allah movement to take a constructive approach and be prepared to compromise when considering their differences. Mr. President, the provision of humanitarian assistance to the population of Yemen should be a top priority of our joint work. We are concerned that because of the funding gap, UN basic assistance programs won't be properly implemented. This includes providing food security to the population and providing access to water and medical services, which is so important in a pandemic. In this context, we would urge donors to ramp up the necessary financial support for the UN's humanitarian assistance. Nonetheless, we'd like to remind you that the provision of assistance should not be biased in nature. We are convinced that a politically neutral decision can be found to the Safar tanker issue as well. We would urge the relevant parties, including the UN Office for Property Services, to take into consideration each other's interests and to act in a constructive manner. In conclusion, I'd like to point out that the establishment of a political settlement process in Yemen directly affects the whole region. In the interest of a de-escalation, we would urge colleagues to cooperate constructively to promote peace and stability. This inter alia should be based on Security Council Resolution 598 and the Russian collective security concept, which presupposes an inclusive and collective approach to resolving problems. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for his statement.